Dobar den, počituvani naši slušatelji i gledači na YouTube kanal od Focus so Silvana Pavlovska. Good afternoon and welcome to In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska. For the last few months, we have been broadcasting on this program the PRESPA agreement as a cultural genocide of the Macedonian national identity towards the termination of an illegal treaty by eminent professor Dr. Igor Janev. In our last broadcast, we completed chapter 4, which was a major chapter in this scholarly publication. Today, we are going to start with chapter 5. From the outset, I wish to mention that we have permission from the professor to broadcast this to you and make it known publicly. It is in English. So chapter 5. The title of chapter 5 is Further Destabilization of a State Due to Exception and Endorsement of the Bulgarian Assimilation Policy into the form of the EU conditions for membership. I'm going to try and see if I can bring this up for us. No, we're not able to share that for the time being. Never mind. So chapter 5.1. The new government of the Social Democrats Party, or SDSM, with the same policy towards the Bulgarian demands and undergoing assimilation of Macedonians into Bulgarians. After the fall of Zaev's government in 2021, his political party SDSM remained in power, and Zaev's party deputy leader, Dimitar Kovachevsky, member of the SDSM, became the new prime minister. Kovachevsky assumed the office of the head of government on January the 17th, 2022. After Zaev officially resigned as the president of the SDSM party, Kovachevsky won the internal party elections on the 12th of December 2021 with strong support from Zaev as his mentor. Kovachevsky was sworn as prime minister on the 16th of January 2022. So he wasn't elected. The party selected him, and then he was sworn as the new prime minister. Not as a result of an election, but as a result of a political party choosing him, or Zaev choosing him to replace him. Despite the progressive opposition and repeated demands for the general election by the Macedonian opposition, SDSM remained in power in 2022, a year to be remembered as a total disaster of national policy, particularly against the Bulgarian assimilation attempts. Due to the lack of a proper political education, the new prime minister, Kovachevsky, did not grasp the apparent deficiencies of the so-called French proposal launched in June 2022 for resolving the so-called, in quotes, dispute with Bulgaria, and naively gave support to the plan in order to obtain a date for starting negotiations with the European Union for membership at any cost. That's what they've been telling people. We need a date, we need a date. And there's no date. Most likely there won't be a date. Silvana making a commentary here. Yeah, so in his address to the Macedonian parliament in July 2022, Kovachevsky proved his incompetence, says Professor Igor Janev, and a complete misunderstanding of the political and legal character of the so-called French proposal for the European Union negotiating framework. Quotation. The reason why we are debating is to define the beginning of negotiations with the EU. We accepted the first proposal, and in Brussels, I loudly said no to the first set of ideas. That set was inconsistent with our red lines. That set of ideas did not guarantee the status of the Macedonian language and did not define a clear beginning of negotiations with the European Union. Short and clear, I said no because it was not good for Macedonia. We were able to get a new proposal that truly reflects our red lines. The Macedonian language is recognized in the EU. The Macedonian language will be spoken everywhere in Europe. Bilateral issues are not part of the negotiating framework with Brussels. And most importantly, the European proposal defines the holding of the first intergovernmental session in Brussels. The government and the president of the state said yes to such a proposal. End of quotation. Kovachevsky attempted to say that the first French proposal was unacceptable, but that the revised second version was satisfactory. In fact, as was revealed later to the public, the first French proposal and the second one, the so-called second one, didn't differ at all. There was no difference. The so-called second version of the French proposal was entirely acceptable by the Bulgarian government, and as such, that framework for the EU negotiations with Macedonia was fully endorsed by the Bulgarian parliament with huge majority of the votes that were cast. Bulgarian side openly revealed the truth that there was no second French proposal, thereby denouncing the ordinary lies that were fabricated by the Macedonian government in order to deceive the public and obtain popular and public support for that apparently dubious proposal at any cost. In addition, the actual content of the French proposal remained completely unknown to the public and the political opposition in Macedonia at that time. With respect to that, the MRODPMNE requested clarification in Parliament. Quotation, we demand that the information sent by the government be returned to them as incomplete material and that the dignity of the Parliament not be violated with such a document. The sheet of paper that the government calls information on the contents of the proposal for the negotiating framework for negotiations between Macedonia and the EU is an utter disrespect to the members of parliament. It's not possible to discuss the most important work in the country in the next 10 years with one sheet of paper. End of quote. What was discovered in public a bit later was that the French proposal was accompanied with a special protocol between the two governments that in fact incorporated all Bulgarian conditions, and therefore revised version was even worse than the initial original French proposal, allegedly refused by the government. That protocol later to be signed between the Macedonian Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Bulgarian Minister of Foreign Affairs was kept a secret from the members of parliament and the Macedonian public. The Macedonian Daily Republika reports that the parliamentary group requests that the Macedonian-Bulgarian protocol be submitted urgently to the public, which is the most important document in this process. This demand by the Macedonian opposition and the public remained unanswered, and full text of the protocol remained hidden up to the moment of its conclusion. Why so? The protocol was signed and concluded by, not again, Osmani, the Albanian from Kosovo, unfortunately, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of North Macedonia, but sometimes his behavior is one of a minister of whatever affairs of Albania, which is a totally separate foreign country. That's my commentary, by the way. Yeah, so he signed it. Osmani signed it, and so did the Bulgarian Foreign Minister Genčovska on Sunday morning, 17th of July, in Bulgaria, far from the eyes of the Macedonian public. Unbelievable. The leader of the Vermerode Permanent, Mickovsky, rejected a disgraceful French proposal, stating that this plan does not offer any beginnings of the European Union integration, but that rather complete blockade in the process of the EU integration. Quotation, in Bulgaria, they rejoice that this proposal contains all the demands, which are extremely unfavorable for Macedonia and tend to deny the Macedonian identity, language, and history. End of quote. And Mickovsky and the presidency of his party also observed the creation of a, quotation, dispute on identity embedded in the new EU conditions. Quotation, if the unilateral declaration of Bulgaria is added to this content, which directly denies the uniqueness of the Macedonian language and notes that this is a Bulgarian dialect, it is obvious what position Macedonia is in, which does not have any guarantees from the European Union for the European perspective, end of quote. Vermero and the entire political opposition have spotted and finally understood, have realized and finally understood that the attached unilateral declarations of Bulgaria and Macedonia actually created an artificial dispute on culture this time. They were Bulgarian disgraceful conditions formally transformed as actual EU conditions that need to be met in order to achieve the membership in the EU. I question this. How can you have this so-called dispute on culture alleged by the Bulgarian state and put that through with the European Union as a European Union condition? How can the European Union admit something like that? Did they not read it? Or if they did read it, why did they allow it? It was another condition to be met, a new condition. In more details, these conditions were spelled out in the protocol between Macedonia MFA and Bulgarian MFA, MFA meaning Ministers of Foreign Affairs, that became attached and constituent part of the EU framework standard described as the French proposal or French framework for EU negotiations with the Republic of North Macedonia. As in the case of the PRESPA agreement, the Bulgarians demands actually encompass a disgraceful condition for constitutional amendments as a prerequisite for even starting the EU negotiations. These constitutional amendments related to history and culture, as was discovered by the Bulgarians themselves, attempt to clarify that Macedonians have Bulgarian roots. They have Bulgarian roots, and that the Macedonian as such didn't exist. In order to prevent the process of an apparently imposed and therefore forceful assimilation and block the, quotation, mandatory constitutional revisions as EU conditions, the leader of Vermerode Permanent, Christian Mickovsky, requested from his parliamentary group, the MPs and the coalition MPs, to swear not to vote for the constitutional changes requested by Bulgaria, requested or demanded by Bulgaria, I think. With respect to that all Vermerode Permanent's members of parliament notarized statements that they will not accept any changes in the constitution. The leader of the opposition, Mr. Mickovsky, at a press conference stated that, quotation, a total of 44 MPs from Vermerode Permanent and the coalition as a guarantee to the people have notarized statements that they will not accept a change to the constitution in good conscience, end of quote. And added a view that, quote, this is the completion of the second part of Zaiev's betrayal, end of quote. He also added that the, in quote, betrayal will be uneasy conscience that every MP and member of the government who supported this proposal must live with, end of quote. Apparently, constitutional revision now as a European condition, the Bulgarian government requested with a view to establish Bulgarians in the constitution as a constituent nation in this country. By this revision or rather transformation, all Macedonians could be redefined and reshaped as Bulgarians. Wouldn't that be lovely? That was entirely unacceptable for the vast majority of Macedonians. The majority of ethnic Macedonians rejected to be redefined as Bulgarians, despite the EU promises for better future in EU. Now, well then, EU promising better future if the Bulgarians were included in the constitution as ethnic minorities or groups of people living in Macedonia, of which there are hardly any. What a demand, disguised as a European Union condition, and then, of course, declared by the European Union, because it seems like it was a condition. It seems like it was a condition, Silvana commenting on these statements. This European Union, in fact, contributed to the imposed and forceful assimilation of Macedonians, completely unaware of legal aspects related to assimilation. I would ask, completely unaware or fully unaware? Yes, the journalist in me asking questions. Anyway, I think we should end this section here and now and continue chapter 5 very shortly. Thank you for watching In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska, broadcasting from Melbourne, Australia. Greetings, everyone, wherever you are in this beautiful world of ours. Bye for now.